Yo, what's going on YouTube? Today, we're not going to have an intro. Kind of want to have a more serious discussion with the people of YouTube. A place where I can just get all my thoughts. A video where I can just get all my thoughts in one place. And because there's a lot to take in here, man. So if you don't know, you probably know by the title by now, actually. I'm going to be discussing the decision Respawn has made to remove tap-strafing from Apex. As a PC player, as a keyboard and mouse player, I just don't agree with a lot of the points they go over. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, let me switch to the full screen. And we're going to be talking about John Larson, who I guess he's the new head balance designer over at Respawn. I'm not sure. We're going to be going over his movement tech and mobility in Apex that he posted on September 1st, where he pretty much discusses how Respawn plans to get rid of tap-strafing. So, yeah, let's get into it. Before we do so, I do want to say I respect Respawn very much, and I appreciate all they do and everything they've given us with Apex. It's just a shame some of the decisions they are deciding to make. And I just disagree with a lot of the stuff they go over, and that's really what I want to discuss today. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, the first, 3 paragraphs is pretty much just describing tap-strafing. So I'm going to read them to y'all, briefly go over them, but I'm not really going to have much to say until we get further down into their post. It is a very beefy post, and there is a lot to take in. So, starting with the first paragraph, it reads, "Tap-strafing is a term associated with different sorts of movement depending on who you ask. Internally, we generally use it to describe what many associate with scroll wheel strafing." This is true. A lot of people do tend to use scroll wheel over standard spamming the spacebar. Removed tap-strafing comes across pretty aggressively for movement enthusiasts. To be more explicit, this change targets multiple rapid directional commands after jumping. Movement should feel unchanged for controllers and for mouse and keyboard players who hadn't heard of the term tap-strafe until yesterday. Thanks to the work of a couple of our engineers, this is now easily tunable on the fly, and we have the ability to iterate on or even revert it completely without a client update. The main thing to take away from this paragraph, if anything, is the fact that they'll be able to tune this on the fly, because I just hope that this change comes out and they completely revert it. And if movement really will feel unchanged is yet to be determined. There's a lot of people in the movement community, much smarter than myself, who describe why removing this could easily destroy the movement in Apex. But you know what? That's yet to be decided. That's not really what I'm here to argue. So we're just going to keep going. The goal is to remove some of the sharpness and momentum conservations around 90-degree plus angles. That's what I'm thinking of when I use the term tap-strafe. Throughout this post, things like wall bounce redirects back onto the same wall should feel unchanged, but movement afforded by scroll wheel strafing will be removed. Okay, so another thing to take away from that is that scroll wheel strafing to hop over the wall you just wall bounced off of is something I do regularly now. Pretty much if I'm trying to wall bounce over a wall, it can be done with just regular air strafing, but tap strafing makes it so much easier. And that's really one thing that tap strafing just makes a lot of other movement tech much easier to perform. But moving forward, tap strafing is something I've thought about nearly every day since seeing it for the first time. The player in me loves the idea of it for skill expression. A monkey would be a better mouse and keyboard player than me. We'll get to that in a bit. But I took some time to experiment with scroll wheel strafing in particular. I felt the dopamine rush, I thought about the outplay opportunities, and I love tuning into streams with flashy plays. However, my designer brain started to chum, and the more I saw, the more I felt the mechanics seemed like forbidden fruit. Essentially what he's telling us, by the way, is he doesn't play mouse and keyboard. And we'll see later on in the post that he really doesn't understand mouse and keyboard much at all. And it leads me to wonder if anybody at Respawn even plays on mouse and keyboard. He's saying it's forbidden fruit. I would completely disagree. If you're on a mouse and keyboard, tap strafing is very easy. Most people can tap strafe on mouse and keyboard these days, I would assume. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably around like 60% of all mouse and keyboard players know how to do it. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe. But it's really not a hard mechanic. It's not forbidden fruit. It just adds to your game. Let's table that for a second and dive right into one of the spiciest topics in Apex. Okay, so this is where he's going to start debating aim assist. I don't know why they're talking about aim assist. I mean, I know why, but this isn't really about aim assist. So I'm going to try to just get through this as fast as possible because I don't really care. Yeah, the mouse and keyboard versus controller debate. I can't speak to one superiority over the other. They have their pros and cons. For the record though, across MMR levels, rank, you name it, the difference in weapon performance is not nearly as great as some would believe. Predator level controllers are not beating out Predator level mouse and keyboards with prowlers in close range at any sort of crazy rate. You know what? I'm going to tend to believe him on that. As much as the mouse and keyboard community loves to complain about controllers, I really don't think they're that big of a deal. Right? Aim assist definitely has its flaws. By the way, I played on a console and I played on controller for 23 years of my life. So, 22 years of my life. So, I by no means hate controller players. I'm fully aware aim assist is a necessity for mouse and key, or for, for controller players to pretty much do anything. Very few controller players would actually be able to function without aim assist. I'm fully aware why it's there. If it's too powerful or not, that's a topic that I don't really care to get into at the moment. I'll have some more on it to say in a bit, but let's just keep reading. Data aside, we can assume pro players with thousands of hours of playtime have legitimate concerns. I'm not writing these off. To quote the designer behind Apex Aim Assist, Raim Vincent, if I'm saying your name wrong, I do apologize. I have NA education, okay? NA education, by the way. I don't know if I'm saying your name wrong, dude. I apologize. I mean, no disrespect. To quote the designer behind Apex's Aim Assist, Raim Vincent, conceptually, Aim Assist sits at the input layer above balance design. This is true. Using it as a difficulty lever is bad. Aim Assist is for accessibility, and yes, it's easy for us to accidentally make it too good. And where that line is can be up for debate. A lot of controller players get upset that mouse and keyboard players bitch about aim assist, but we're not bitching about console players with aim assist. We're bitching about PC controller players with aim assist, because something that the console community just doesn't quite understand, which is reasonable, they don't understand it because they don't play on PC with high refresh rate, is the ability to aim with aim assist on a high refresh rate monitor. When you're playing this game at 190 FPS, what most people on PC cap it at, you're getting so much more information on your screen than a console player is who's playing this game at 60 FPS. If you're on the new consoles, I imagine the original PS4 and Xbox One is even less. So, and also there's less input lag on PC. So aim assist is much more oppressive on controller players that are playing on a PC. As Apex and its players evolve, it's only prudent for us to continue to evaluate whether or not aim assist is too good. When I see top level controller players saying that they would be alright with nerfing aim assist, I definitely take note. Players should not feel forced to use a specific input, and if I see players converting out of what they think is necessity, I would 100% be concerned. In fact, I'm meeting with CGE, weapons, and analytics team this week to take a temperature reading of the situation. Alright, I don't know what CGE is, I'm going to be honest. If anybody knows what CGE is, put it down in the comments. I would appreciate it. Anyhow, if anybody follows NRG Sweet, a pro player, he said it, and I kind of agree with the direction the game is currently heading. I think it'll be a year and a half, and all competitive players will be on a controller. It seems they want to make movement as limited as possible. Like I said, we're gonna get farther into this and see what he really has to say about tap-strafing. It seems like they're trying to limit movement as much as possible, and they're really trying to push a controller meta. I'm going to be honest, this season with the Prowler, the Rampage, those two guns, though, are very dominant on controller versus on mouse and keyboard. Prowler aim assist is ridiculous, and the Rampage is just, it just doesn't miss if you're on a controller. That thing, there's better weapons for keyboard players, for sure, than the Rampage, but it's a really dominant weapon for controller players. So it looks like we're heading into a controller dominant meta. And so we'll see where it goes from here. But from a mouse and keyboard player's perspective, it definitely seems like we're headed in the direction of a controller dominant meta. I think about some of the input layer differences between mouse and keyboard and controller. Looting speed, strafing, range performance, movement capabilities, and think that it's a bummer we can't have perfect gameplay parity. That's impossible as long as both input types exist. It's also the reason we're hesitant when people ask for separate Valk jetpack keybinds so they can wall bounce. For example, what may seem like a simple quality of life change can give a controller player a bit of fear of missing out. Alright, this paragraph right here is where my real concerns start, okay? Essentially, what I take away from this is you're going to cater to the controller players before the mouse and keyboard players, okay? Look, I'm completely against crossplay for the record. Everybody wanted crossplay in video games, and I think we're starting to see why it's a problem for mouse and keyboard and controller to ever compete within the same lobbies. They're just not inputs that are meant to be played against each other because of all the things he goes over. I mean, looting speed on a mouse and keyboard is just, it's a different world compared to a controller. A controller player, the looting speed is literally like 1/4 of what a good mouse and keyboard player's looting speed is. It's completely different. And that's just because a mouse and keyboard allows you to be more accurate and more precise with where you're looking so you can quickly pick items up, there's less input delay, and you have more keys that you can just spam at your capability. Range performance, yeah, that's a big one. If the thing is though, the only type of mouse and keyboard players that are going to have good range performance are high top tier level aimers, which is not easy to achieve, versus on a controller where you get aim assist and I mean, obviously you still have to be good, but very far range gunfights I think favor controller players more so than mouse and keyboard players, especially because this game isn't a hit scan game, the bullet shoot projectiles, so I definitely think this lends itself to controllers, but I'm not even complaining about that. I don't really care. Movement capabilities, once again, is much easier on mouse and keyboard. We're seeing that with tap-strafing, super gliding, wall bouncing, b-hopping, everything in between. Once again, we just have more input on a keyboard, and a controller will literally never be able to replicate that. Never. Obviously, good controller players can wall bounce and b-hop, but just not at the consistency and speed that a mouse and keyboard player can, especially once you get into ropes and rope jumping and super jumping and all that. I don't think many controller players can do that, and that's just because of the amount of inputs you have on a keyboard and because of the mouse, how fast you can do a 180-degree turn. Mouse and keyboard players can do a 180-degree turn in the blink of an eye, and they don't have to use a ridiculously high sensitivity to do it, because a mouse just grants more range of motion and freedom of expression, essentially. And the two inputs are just completely different. Moving to the bottom, he goes, what may seem like a simple quality of life change can give a controller player a bit of fear of missing out. And see, that's the problem. So a controller player can't tap strafe, from my understanding. I think very few can, but most people will never be able to tap strafe on a controller, versus where on a mouse and keyboard, it's very easy to do. And he's saying this is giving them fear of missing out. So essentially what he's saying is, if a controller player can't do it, we're not going to allow keyboard players to do it, because that's a fear of missing out. That's just not good game design. What's the point of playing on a mouse and keyboard anymore if you're going to be limited to only what controller players can do? What's next? Are we not going to be able to strafe back and forth when looting boxes on a keyboard because a controller player can't do it. Imagine they do that next. Like, where does this end? Because I'm going to be honest, I don't think it ends at tap-strafing. I really don't. And I think moving forward, if any other movement tech comes up in this game, they're going to try to hinder it if a controller player can't do it. Unfortunately, the asks of increasing aim assist at range or improving the looting flow on controllers are not as easy as changing a couple of numbers. Some things are deeply ingrained in muscle memory where it's not worth touching. Others require a lot more resources to make sure we get it right. We always have our eyes peeled for the opportunities for improvement and try to jump on them when we time to do our due diligence. Okay, first off, this last sentence, just so y'all know, I have reread this paragraph like 3 times because this last sentence needs rewritten. Obviously, this is a long blog post. You're obviously going to find an error or two, but this makes no sense. And try to jump on them when we time to do our due diligence. When we try to jump on them to do our due diligence, like where do we time? Anyhow, that's besides the point. I'm actually about to back up the controller community for a second. Let's go to this sentence. Some things are deeply ingrained in muscle memory where it's not worth touching. All right, why don't you let the controller community decide that? Why don't you add inputs? Maybe you can't, like they said in the post, there's limitations. That's understandable. But if the only reason you're not allowing controller players to do these things is because it's going to require them to do certain keybinds that's not engraved in muscle memory, so you're just like, screw it. It's not engraved in their muscle memory. Screw it. Why don't you let the controller community decide what they want to do? I'm sure there are plenty of controller players that would happily go out of their way to learn new button binds to be able to move while looting. Why are you not giving them that freedom? I'm sorry, I just think that's a flaw in your development thinking, right? Like I said, if you literally can't do it because of technical issues, that's one thing, but not allowing them to do it because of muscle memory, like, come on, bro. Like, what? I disagree. I disagree with that philosophy. I think you should let the controller community decide. That goes for any input. If they did that with mouse and keyboard, let the players decide what they want to do. Don't decide for them, especially when it comes to something like muscle memory. Like, I don't know, bro. Okay, let's move on. When people say, gee, dang it, Respawn's balancing decisions cater to controller players, the best answer I have is when it comes to accessibility, we often must consider controller players given the constraints compared to mouse and keyboard. But accessibility does not equal balance design, and it's a straw man argument to treat it as such. Okay, why is it a straw man argument to treat it as such? You're quite literally saying if a controller player can't do it, odds are we're going to reconsider it being allowed in the game. And this is why the two inputs do not need to be together anymore. I genuinely believe that. We need to go back to splitting console with console, PC with PC, or at the very least have an opt-out feature for console players, because this is going to be a problem in every video game moving forward if video games start limiting mouse and keyboard players based on what a controller can do. Dude, do you know why people move to mouse and keyboard and move to PC? It's because the gameplay is faster and smoother. Smoother is subjective. I would say it's smoother. It's faster, it's smoother. You can do more because you have more button binds and key binds. What's the point anymore? What's the point anymore? We're essentially getting rid of all reason to play on a mouse and keyboard, because if a controller player can't do it, they're going to heavily reconsider it. So that's just, I'm sorry, man. I'm going to say it as blunt as possible. That's just bullshit. That's simply just bullshit. This is why I believe tap-strafing exists solely as a design problem. Even in a mouse and keyboard only Apex world, or a scenario where controller and mouse and keyboard could tap-strafe just the same, I don't believe it would be a healthy change with the freedom it currently allows. As someone who prides myself in movement, albeit limited on controller, I gotta say no to the forbidden fruit. This is a much more interesting debate, and I welcome others' opinions. If they could both do it, why is it a problem? Once again, this goes back to you deciding what we can do. Like, I get it, it's y'all's game, but Why would you get rid of a feature that pretty much everybody in your community likes, right? In a perfect world where both mouse and keyboard and controller players could do it, everybody would be doing it, everybody would like it. Because I'm telling you right now, every mouse and keyboard player likes it. And the ones that don't like it, don't know how to do it, and don't want to learn how to do it, despite how incredibly easy it is to learn how to do. Because once you can tap strafe, it just opens up so much freedom to the movement in this game. It makes doing stuff like wall bouncing over a wall much more easy. It allows the octane pad to be so universal. It just opens up so much movement freedom, and it makes the game more fun. It makes the game faster, more fun, more fluid. Like, why do you not want that? I know why. You want to limit what you can do in this game, because anything that adds a skill gap is wrong. They don't make this game for skilled players. They want to reduce the skill gap as much as possible. And yeah, once again, I'm going to put it blunt. That's lame. It's lame that's just the era we live in. All right. And they're never going to come out and blatantly say that. Like, hey, we want to reduce the skill gap because we want bad players to enjoy our game. Even though those bad players are going to enjoy the game regardless. But that's besides the point. It's lame, man. It's lame. It's very lame. Hopefully, I think a lot of people are going to agree with me. If not, let me know. Let me know if you disagree. Maybe I'm wrong, right? Let me know if you disagree with everything I'm saying down below. I'll be sure to read it. And let's have a debate. Because let's have a civil debate. Because I just disagree with all of this. All right, these next two paragraphs I'm going to read back to back because they go hand in hand. And I want to give my opinion in full detail after we read both of these. The first issue, it's highly inaccessible. By inaccessible, we mean that it's an OP technique that's practically impossible to learn organically, and the most egregious examples require a strange keybind. Okay, let's democratize it. Now, most decent players can start incorporating tap-strafe mechanics into their gameplay. That brings us to the second point. Tap-strafes are being used in engagements, but they have terrible readability and limited counterplay. Path graphs and octane pads aside, I've seen clips of players breaking ankles with victims, including high-skilled players, at a loss for what to do. While it's not terrible to prevent, I'm concerned how this could continue to evolve as more players adopt and further develop their tap-strafe mechanics. To those clinging to the no counterplay or readability points, the teams working on improving the wall hack meta or busy visual effects are different than the devs monitoring movement mechanics. Fortunately, in my role, I get to give my 2 cents in most of these areas. They all fall under the preview of live balance in some degree. Quality of life changes come in waves, and we generally don't like holding something up if we have a fix ready to go, regardless of the optics. It's something I think about but don't lose sleep over. It's highly inaccessible is bullshit. This is kind of what they're getting eaten alive over. I'm just going to say it because, yeah, it's a good argument point. It's inaccessible. It's only inaccessible to mouse and keyboard, or to controller players. And you know what's inaccessible to mouse and keyboard players? Aim assist. So why don't you get rid of aim assist, right? That's something I literally will never have the ability to ever use on a mouse and keyboard. Get rid of it. I'm telling you right now, it's not likely a controller player will ever tap strafe, but it's possible. It's literally impossible to have aim assist on mouse and keyboard because they're never going to add that. Why would they? So get rid of aim assist. And by the way, I don't think aim assist needs taken away, but that's a good argument point. And if the developers or anybody disagrees that that's a good argument point, once again, drop it in the comments below. The most egregious examples require a strange keybind. All right, and this is where I really see the issue that what's his name? John Larson doesn't understand mouse and keyboard. I'm going to tell you all right now, scroll wheel on a mouse is not a strange keybind at all. Scroll wheel is utilized in almost every single mouse and keyboard game, from Counter-Strike to Valorant to Fortnite to Call of Duty to this. Pretty much every first-person shooter game has, for the longest time, learned to incorporate scroll wheel into their gameplay. For whatever it be. In Fortnite, they use it to instant reset edits, and Valorant and CSGO, you've always used it for strafing and jumping. It's just one more movement thing that you can do. And it's not at all a strange keybind. And this just shows me that they really over at Respawn I don't think they play keyboard and mouse if they think it's a strange keybind that you're using scroll wheel to move forward. Like, yeah, I am, because you allow us to, and every game has always allowed us to, and that's one of the freedoms of being on a mouse and keyboard. It grants you opportunities to do stuff like using the scroll wheel for arbitrary things that a controller player would never be able to do. And it's just one of the benefits of being on a mouse and keyboard. It's not a strange keybind. So that just tells me that they genuinely do not understand mouse and keyboard gaming. All this is stuff, whatever. This sentence, the teams working on improving the wallhack meta or busy visual effects are different than the devs monitoring the movement mechanics. Okay, it doesn't matter. That does not matter to me personally. The wallhack meta is a problem. There is no counterplay to being scanned with a bloodhound or seer through 3 walls. There is no counterplay to that. It doesn't matter if you nerfed both of them into the ground, as long as you kept their wall scans, which are needed because that's what they're built around, there will never be a counterplay. And those are built into the game, and they're never going to take those legends out. Right off the rip, even if they nerfed them into the ground, there would still never be a counterplay to being scanned through walls. There is no counterplay to being in Caustic's gas and being slowed by it, taking damage from it, and Caustic can see through it perfectly fine while you can't. There is no counterplay to that once you are in the gas. Sure, you can avoid it, but if you are in his gas, there is no counterplay to all 3 things I just mentioned. Tap-strafing, on the other hand, literally just allows you to turn around at a 180-degree turn while keeping all your momentum. The fact that he says there's no counterplay, dude, it's a movement mechanic. It doesn't do anything except grant you more movement. It ain't killing people like Caustic's gas. It ain't giving you more information like Bloodhound and Seer's wall hacks. So, dude, we're starting to get to the point where I feel like he was just trying to say stuff to make it sound justified, and at the end of the day, they just wanted to get rid of it. And that's what they should have said. This whole post could have just been one sentence. Hey, we at Respawn, we don't want tap-strafing in our game. We don't have a reason, we don't need a reason, we don't want it in the game, and so therefore we're taking it out of the game. Because all these reasons just don't even make sense. They don't make sense. They're contradicting. They don't make sense. The third point, which is the most problematic, is how it's exacerbated by movement abilities. I can buy that a tap-strafe at normal velocity in a gunfight occurs infrequently and is relevant, and its relativity is mild enough to not immediately kill with fire. But path grappling past and tap-strafing back into your face with a Mastiff or Octane cranking 90s while maintaining ridiculous speed brings up greater gameplay concern. Okay, let me tell you something right now, developers. A Pathfinder that grapples away and tap-strafes back with all that momentum and Mastiffs you in the face, he should be able to do that, because do you not understand the skill required to pull that off, and pull that off effectively almost every time you do it? The amount of skill that requires is an amount of skill that most of your player base will genuinely never reach. Versus the alternative, like I said, Caustic Gas, Seer and Bloodhound wall hacks. That's just a press of a button. That requires no skill. So you're punishing the skilled players. Whatever, man. That's what they do. If you get too good at a video game, you get punished nowadays. In 2021, if you get too good at video games, you get punished nowadays. So two takeaways. Don't play on mouse and keyboard, and don't get too good at video games. You'll be punished. So play on a controller and just play video games for fun, because that's how they were meant to be played. If you want to be competitive, we live in the most competitive era of video games ever, and they're the least competitive they've ever been. Dude, video games back in the early 2000s were more competitive than they are now, because the communities were so small that they were able to ban stuff and regulate stuff within the communities to make it fit their competitive requirements without any issues. Nowadays, everybody wants to be a pro gamer. Everybody wants to be competitive. And because of that, gaming is more competitive than ever. But for some reason, developers don't want to keep up with the times. They want to punish everybody for wanting to be good at video games. So, play in a controller and don't get good at video games, people. Yeah. Mobility creep is something to be very mindful of in this game. While many love the freedom that Apex movement system affords, constraints are just as important. It's not surprising that the mobility legends are highly popular. Why don't we just make more of them? Or, excuse me, why don't we just do more of that? Well, over time, and I'd say we are already seeing it, mobility creep opens a Pandora's box. How is third-party rate affected by mobility? Within a fight, how are front lines defined? How quickly can I close the gap on an enemy? The game is designed to work well with a finite number of movement possibilities. Well, third-partying became a problem when you updated Octane's pad, where you could slide into it and literally shoot yourself across the map. Last time I checked, tap-strafing doesn't allow you to move across the map at a faster rate, like at all. But the third-partying became a problem with Octane's pad, not tap-strafing. Once again, you're trying to justify something that just doesn't quite make sense. But okay. I feel it's important to note that the limitations don't always equate to lowering the skill gaps. In this instance, it does. Getting rid of tap-strafing 100% lowers the skill gap. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Dead stop. Removing tap-strafing 110 million %, which that's not even a real number, 1 trillion %, reduces the skill gap. There is no ifs, ands, buts, or maybes about it. There are skill gaps and working within constraints. One could argue B-hop healing lowered the skill ceiling. Nobody's arguing that. I'm sorry, nobody's arguing that. And if you are going to argue that them having B-hop healing made the game less skillful, leave that down below. I'd love to hear your argument. You know, if you have a good argument, hey, let me know. Players can make up for misplays with less constraints on their ability to safely heal. Different types of skill expressions are changed when we touch something like perfect air control for better or for worse. Alright, different types of skill expression are changed. I want to just go over this because that's essentially, that would be the argument point. Well, different types of skills would say that, B-hop healing was bad. Okay, if this is a slow-paced game, sure, I would maybe agree with you. The problem is Apex Legends is a fast-paced battle royale built with fluent movement involved. So, for a fast-paced game, tap-strafing works. It wouldn't work in Escape from Tarkov, because in Tarkov, you don't want that. That's not what the game was designed around. Apex was designed around fast-paced, good movement, and gunplay. In fact, let me bring up one thing on your screen real quick. Alright, I don't know if y'all can read this, but let's read what this is real quick. What is Apex Legends' core philosophy? That is something Respawn had to find out. Where do they want to position themselves between core FPS and hero shooter developed over the last 1.5 years? I believe this was made when Apex first came out. I'm not sure. Somebody tweeted this and it's so funny. With the current philosophy being, Apex is a game about gun skill first and foremost, and only a hero shooter second, or even third or fourth. I can tell you right now that is not what the game is currently, but okay. Your aim, core movement skills, and especially your positioning should be the determining factor to come out on top. Your legend abilities should only contribute maybe 10% towards your win. I'm just going to leave that there. And let you guys decide for yourselves. That. Only 2 paragraphs left. Players aren't consciously thinking about these things most of the time, but it's the summation of all the little things that help define the unique feel of Apex. If this was Octane Legends, more so than it already is, could you imagine how much we'd have to buff defensive character abilities to stand a fighting chance? And a genuine question that I'd love to hear answered for, why do you think a backpack isn't included in the starter kit? It wasn't an arbitrary decision to leave it out, winky face. Okay, let me start here. Why do I think backpacks aren't including in your starter kit? I don't know. I don't care. I don't know. I don't care. What does this have to do with tap-strafing? Just tell me why it's not in the starting. Tell me why, because I'm not going to sit and waste my time thinking about why it isn't. All right, here's another thing I saw on Twitter, and this is very true. I want to go over this really quickly. Players aren't consciously thinking about these things most of the time. I saw somebody mention this on Twitter, and it's very true. The Respawn developers just love to shit on the Apex community and say, we don't know what we're talking about, you guys don't have the data, you don't think about these things from a developing standpoint, yada yada yada. Look, man, I'm sick of you guys thinking your community doesn't know any better. I'm sick of you thinking your community is just idiots, ignorant people just playing your game, complaining because my movement got taken away. Look, man, I'm telling you right now, as somebody who's been a part of the Apex community for roughly a year now, the Apex community 100% is the most chilled out and smartest battle royale community of the top 3: Warzone, Apex, and Fortnite. Fortnite is provised of little kids nowadays. About 90% of its player base are little kids, and they cater to little kids. Warzone's community is 99% aimbotters, and the 1% that isn't aimbotting is moving to Apex because it's the most balanced and well-designed battle royale in the market. And your community that helped build this game is just, most of them are extremely chill and very smart and very good at the game. The best aimers I've ever seen on PC all come from Apex. Because if you can aim well in Apex, it's not like aiming well in Call of Duty. Because in Call of Duty, you get eliminated within half a second. In this game, you actually have to know how to track. I've seen some of the craziest players play this game in all of gaming. I've seen some of the smartest, most chilled players play this game in all of gaming, and just because people have never developed a game doesn't mean we don't know how to design a game. There's a difference between developing the game and designing the game. And you guys just assume we know nothing about game design. And honestly, it's really discouraging to be part of this community where the developers constantly sit and say that we don't know what we're talking about as the community. It's not right, man. It's not cool. If this was Octane Legends more so than it already is, could you imagine how much we'd have to buff defensive character abilities to stand a fighting chance? In public matches, have you ever considered that people don't want to play Gibby or Caustic or Rampart or Watson because people don't want to sit and hide and camp in a building because that's not fun for, I would argue, the majority of players. I'm not going to say the overwhelming majority, but definitely for the majority of players, that is not fun to sit and play like that. It just isn't. So we like running around and using movement to just move around and get in gunfights and have fun. So why would you not allow that? I've thought about tap-strafing a lot, and I'm well aware this decision would be met with adversity. I'm not a tap-strafe specialist in any way. We discussed it quite a bit internally and consulted with our best mouse and keyboard players as well as some pros. We're bringing in a handful to play around with the changes to make sure our movement tech isn't caught in the crossfire. I know it's a contentious topic, and because of that, it's hard for me to feel great about this decision. I do think it's the right one, though. Hopefully this provides some sort of context, and as well, I'm happy to hear your thoughts. All right, so they talk about they use their internal best mouse and keyboard players. Look, I'm just going to make the broad assumption that your best mouse and keyboard players don't even come close to pro-level mouse and keyboard players. And if you are bringing in mouse and keyboard players, you better be bringing in movement players like Fade, like Hollow, like Lyric, and like Asu. All right, you need to be bringing in your movement players because, no offense, I love the dude. He's one of the best players in the world. Nobody's going to deny that. If you bring in somebody like Hal's not a movement player. He is not the best with the movement in this game. That doesn't mean he's terrible. It doesn't mean he's bad. Clearly, he's one of the best players in the world. But he ain't doing the stuff that Fade, Hollow, Lyric, and Asu are doing on the regular with the movement. Those guys are going to be the ones who notice changes to the movement mechanics first and foremost. And I hope what you're saying is true. Hopefully, it doesn't mess with any of the other movement. But like I said there are people within the community who know how the game's movement system is designed internally. and assume it will mess with the movement. So I'm not going to make an assumption. That's yet to be determined. But yeah, hopefully this provides some context, yada, yada, yada. That is their tweet longer. That is the post. That's my opinion on all of it. Wrapping things up, I think this is a terrible decision. I think they need to heavily reconsider it. I don't think tap-strafing is a problem. It's only inaccessible to controller players. And this is just, in my opinion, an example why mouse and keyboard and controller players shouldn't be playing in the same lobbies. At least without the option to tap out, without the option of saying no. Like if a controller player wants to go up against only console, they should be allowed. They shouldn't be forced to play against mouse and keyboard. Anyhow, if you are on mouse and keyboard, if you're on PC, there's two things, like I said earlier, we need to take away from this. One, play on a controller, because we now live in a day and age where if a controller can't do it, they're not going to allow a mouse and keyboard player to do it. And two, don't get too good at video games, because you're going to get punished. They're just going to get rid of everything, and they don't want that. I do want to iterate one more time. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Respawn whatsoever. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to John Larson. I actually will thank him for even posting that, for somewhat giving us some clarification, I suppose. I really, at the end of the day, I do love Apex Legends. The removal of tap-strafing isn't going to stop me from playing the game, but it does worry me of where the game is headed and the direction they are going to decide to take this game in the future. And at some point in time, if they keep going down this route, I do think they are going to lose a lot of players. The game I was playing before Apex was Fortnite, and this exact same thing slowly killed Fortnite for a lot of the more mature, older audience, the people that made the game popular. We all kind of stopped playing because over time they kind of reduced the skill gap and made the game more kid-friendly and noob-friendly, and kind of just didn't care for the OG players or the players that liked the skill gap in that game. And it slowly over time pushed out the player base. Obviously that game is still wildly popular today, and I don't think Apex is going to die anytime soon. In fact, the game's growing right now. So I truly do hope the best for this game. And I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Respawn. Thank y'all for creating this game. I've been playing y'all's games since Call of Duty 4, when y'all were still with Activision and Infinity Ward. I played Titanfall 1. Didn't play Titanfall 2, but Titanfall 1 was great. Yeah, that's that. If you guys would like to know maybe more, have any questions, you guys can come watch me stream live every day over at twitch.tv/imskova. I stream Apex nightly, I should say, not daily. Nightly in terms of Central Standard Time. Yeah. If you disagree with anything, leave it down in the comments below. I would happily read through this. I'm happy for an open discussion. I would love to hear what controller players have to think. Reasonable controller players, not people that are just going to come and comment, "This is bullshit. You're just mad because you're a movement player and you don't like what they're doing. This game's not catered to you." If you have a real argument, let me know. I will happily read it. And yeah, just like John Larson said in his post, I'm happy to discuss this further with people. If you enjoyed this long commentary, agree with anything I said, and want to see maybe more of this, please leave a like and share the video. Possibly subscribe if you want. I don't know. I'm not a YouTuber. I stream mostly. But any and all support is welcome. I thank you all. And y'all have a good day, night, evening, morning, wherever you are at. And YouTube. Until whenever my next video is, y'all take care. Peace out.